thanks for the opportunity to come and talk to everyone over here about what we're doing together, right? We're going to do an actual case study on an actual deployment at a real place. It's interesting.
Very exciting.
What are we doing here with the slides? The slides are missing some graphics.
Uh-oh.
So we're just going to have to wing it, okay? But I was just talking for 2 minutes at the beginning about the data set we're actually collecting, right? What the detection technology is. We weren't on Greg's slide at the beginning. Don didn't mention us, so I'll just pull that out quickly so people know what we're talking about. There's a lot of technology coming at the audience over the course of today. Stephanie's going to talk through how that has manifested itself within the Forest City business. And I think any new emerging industry needs champions, right? And so we should all feel happy that Stephanie's made the trip all the way over here as a champion to talk about what it is like in the real world rather than from inside a laboratory. That's some of the stuff that we're talking about today. And then actually very little on what's next. I think there's a lot of what's next today. And I think a good case study is what's real right now. Stephanie did say to me last night, we are not a $9 billion real estate company. We're an
$11.8 billion real estate company, Cyrus.
I said I got the number from Wikipedia and you're the Vice President of Digital Marketing. And so we move on. Anyway, so look, just very briefly, how do we get the data that we're using to answer some of these issues that real estate companies have and that retailers have around the world? Technology came out of MIT, and the technology assumes that everyone has got a cell phone in their pocket. Specifically, not a smartphone, right? And so we do use smartphone data. We gather Wi-Fi and Bluetooth signals as part of what we do, absolutely, but we only really use that to measure rate of return. How often do people come back to a center? We're all about locating people within a physical space. And we do that in this brilliant graphic. There's lots of people with cell phones in a certain location, right? And I reiterate, let's imagine that we're not in San Francisco. Let's imagine that we're in Riga in Latvia or a remote part of India. I mean, we've done some projects right out in the field where maybe people don't all have this week's iPhone 5, right? There's plenty of people that have got a dual SIM Nokia 8110, and we're trying to measure those as well, right? We want to see a data set that is at least 98% of shoppers. In a 5-second view of how cell phone technology works, everyone probably knows that the way a call finds you sitting in here is that you are registered with a local cell phone tower, right? And your phone is pretty persistently sending a TMZ signal, in the case of the US, informing the tower of your location and where you are. Should it receive a call anywhere in the world, that's how it's going to find you. And the path technology came down to a sort of very smart set of receiver equipment, sponges, if you like, that you would put in a location, and when I turn them on, they create a 3-dimensional RF map of the location that we're in, and then we calibrate that map to help it understand the location of any phone that's sending a signal off to a tower. Now, here's a brilliant graphic of that happening. But to make sense of that, imagine every 2 or 3 minutes, every cell phone in any physical location is going to publish its location anonymously, right? And it's a passive technology. There's nothing being installed on the unit. So every cell phone that's on, every couple minutes, says this is where I am. And the path RF map, if you like, is locating that within about 2 square meters of its location. Very quickly, you build up a very dense data set, and then we use that data set in all kinds of actionable business insight, if you like, that we're going to talk about now. So do people kind of get where the technology is coming from? So we looked at lots of things we could use that technology for, and just like everyone in this room, we've looked at and are working in airports, in entertainment halls, in department stores, all kinds of things. But the simplest path to a return on investment and the fastest route to getting a general commercial value out of deploying the technology we've seen in shopping centers. And here's why, right? So there's a level of debate and information people have wanted for a long time. I mean, in the whole history of retail, why do people come back? How much do they spend? Where do they like to go? What can I do to make this a better environment for them? How can I be 1 degree more interesting a destination than the people I'm competing with? And up to now, I mean, it's pretty interesting technology, but perimeter counting would solve a scenario like that, where, I mean, it's obviously not a very popular shopping center because only 5 people have visited today, but when I've got, a couple of people coming and returning later on, and some people are shopping in a lot of places, and some not very many, some people are just going to food, that kind of puzzle. And then I try and build an optimized retail environment for that shopper to come and visit. Up to now, the technology has looked something like this, right? People visit, they come, they go, they leave, lots more people come, they're moving around, this scenario is playing out. And I'm counting people in and out at the front door using, probably cameras or laser beams or something like that. 15, 20 years of development in that space, and that's kind of where we ended up with. And you could say, when I put the marketing campaign on, the number went up, or year on year, so on and so on and so on. The opportunity created by most of the people in this room, right, certainly a lot of all the technology vendors in here, is how can we get a layer underneath that? And that's what we approached with the tech. And so we said, okay, I don't want to count people, and I don't want to ask them about their behavior, I want to be able to observe their behavior passively and use that for my decision-making platform going forwards in the future. So as the same scenario plays out, and the same people are moving around all of that, we get a different depth of data set out the back of it. I might just have a sip of my water. And we get data like, what's the difference between absolute visitors and visits, right? How many uniques are we getting? How often do people come back? What stores do they actually visit? How long do they spend? If I subcategorize kinds of shoppers, the people that come by car or the people that come by train, do they stay longer or less? The people that eat in this particular restaurant. And that kind of relationship, that kind of density of data is where we've got to. And so that technology is out and working, and we're live in about 150 locations now in production. So this is a pretty proven platform for data collection from here on. So all's well. What do I then do with that data?
I just want to, before I get into the case studies and how we've used the data, I did want to mention something that I think is really important. At least for a city, it's very important, which is the aggregated anonymous nature of the data that we're getting from Path. So there have been some misunderstandings, and I think when you get groups like this together and you talk about what's possible, there's the ability for consumers and even people in the industry to be confused as to what's possible and what are you really talking about specifically. So with Path, what's great is we can get a lot of data without jeopardizing people's privacy. And I know we're going to spend a lot of time talking about this today. I'm really excited to hear everyone that's here, but that to me is very important as a consumer of this research tool, and it's important, I think, to society too, to understand that we can get data without it being necessarily a jeopardy to people's private information. Anyway, sorry.
No, cool.
One of the things that we really have to know in shopping centers is, as landlords, I'm going to give you the 2-second version of what we're trying to do. Obviously, we're trying to maximize rents, and we're trying to maximize traffic, and we're trying to keep people happy. You can shop online, so that's not what we're about. We have to make the experience that much better. In the past, the only tool that we had to measure that was a sales report that we got 2 months in arrears. So really, how meaningful could that be? And some of that information is proprietary to the retailer. We don't even get it. So as far as trying to be able to improve our products, tools like this are really, really important, as you can well imagine. So as a landlord, we have to determine when we give a lot of TA or tenant allowance to a cinema, is it really worth it? Is it driving restaurant sales like we think it is? Is it driving additional shopping revenue? Or do people go to the movies, get in their car, and go home? And they ate the peanut butter and jelly at home before they came, so we didn't even get a meal. So it's really important for us to understand that. So this is just an example of the synergies between shopping, dining, and cinema attendance. This is just one way that we used it. I don't have to click. Oh, you're clicking. This is another really interesting piece of data, and we got it wishing we could count traffic. Once we got the tool, I think that it's the same with anyone. Once you get a little bit of knowledge, then you start going, but what if we could layer in this? And what if we could layer in that? And now we're getting much more sophisticated with using the data. I like to think we're as sophisticated as anyone out there using this sort of data. This shows a question that we posed to Path. We are redeveloping a shopping center in Richmond, Virginia, and an escalator can be $1 million mistake. So we wanted to try to determine where the patterns of vertical transportation were and how they were meeting current customer need. And then based on that information, we wanted to see if it was possible that we took out an escalator from the main entrance that we felt was sort of closing it up, provide it in a different location that would actually give some synergy to the area that we were having on the second floor that was sort of cold. In other words, just repurposing an escalator. So this data informed design decisions that we're making currently in the redevelopment of Short Pump. Is that it?
No, it's not.
It's not it. I'm almost done. This is a really interesting idea. We've always thought about capacity based on what a fire marshal tells us capacity for a store or a stadium or a restaurant are. But using path data, we've been observing what happens over time with people's patterns of shopping, lingering dwell time we talked about. And we're starting to get to the point where we can see an optimal level of traffic or shoppers at a shopping center at any given time. And what we're really interested in doing is using this data then to maybe change the hours of operations of a shopping center. It used to be that, there were stay-at-home moms and there were people, men that went to work, and the ladies did the shopping during the week, and the weekend you went to church or whatever it is you did. Now everybody's working. Should we stay open longer on Sundays and maybe condense the hours on a Monday to make it more tailored to a modern family and how they need to get their errands and shopping done or enjoy time together? So this is the germ of the idea, and then taken to sort of the nth degree, we'll use this to tailor shopping centers to better meet consumers' needs and what they really want.
It's maybe a fiddly level of data, but it is interesting when you get into optimum traffic and dwell inside a physical space. And we've seen other clients around the world do things like they play and test with car parking fees, right? Or how to merchandise the local subway station and stuff like that around how to affect the behavior of people now that I know that I'm going to get too congested to really keep shoppers happy when they're in the space.
This next slide is important in some of our projects, but I can imagine that it'd be very important as far as commercial real estate goes in general. We are interested in some states. We have property in upstate New York that borders Canada, and when the exchange rate's right and the moon aligns with the stars, we get a really nice uptick in traffic and sales. And it would be very interesting for us to know how much of that traffic is just because maybe the economy is recovering, how much of it is because of the exchange rate, and how much of it is how far from the border, et cetera, do you get that uplift? So what's really interesting is we can tell what the country of origin is in the data that were provided from Path. And that's not relevant at all of our properties, but there are some southern Florida and New York that it's very relevant. It also would help you tailor your marketing messages if you knew that fully a third of your traffic was coming from Central America in South Florida, and some of that's sort of intuitive, but it does help.
But it is intriguing. I see intrigue face. So how many people in here are not from the US? So I'd say it's less than 10, I guess. But like me, everyone in here that's traveled in for this show, as your cell phone turns on and you start picking up text and phone messages from home, the way that works is your phone has informed the local network to say, I am okay for billing, right? AT&T will get paid by Vodafone in the UK if you allow this phone to connect by sending an IMSI signal. And so by benefit of using 2G, 3G, 4G cell data to make this technology work, we pick that up. And in the spirit of full disclosure, these numbers are not from Forest City. This is from a department store in central London. But you can imagine, certainly anyone here that works in retail, as soon as I can understand the demographics around country of origin within a store, I can get into teaching a few key phrases in Mandarin to the people that are working on the shop floor, or rotating digital signage around the 3 main languages that are out, I know are on the shop floor any given day, or measuring the impact of marketing campaigns I'm doing at the local hotels and so on, and seeing how that changes day on day, week on week, year on year, month on month, and so on and so on. So it's interesting. It's an interesting space. And similarly, and one thing I think, there's 2 areas that the industry has got to get right? One is the difference between perception and logic on personal privacy, which Stephanie was talking about a minute ago. And I know the guys at Euclid and Retail, all these people, they take enormous care to ensure that there's no infringement of anyone's privacy. The other place that we're going to have to get right and work on is how can I make the data accessible that allows me to benchmark performance of locations or specific retailers or even departments within a big chain of stores against, a local average, a national average, a global one, right? And how can I share that data really probably, because I don't want to get tied to proprietary tool. There's lots of space for lots of, amazing ideas and innovation to come in here, but we do need shared data across the top of it. But this example of work we're doing right now, and I've left the Euros on though in order to make it clear this is a European, I think live in 12 countries, client that we're working with. And what they're trying to do is say, within my own portfolio, what should the performance of each of these retail brands be, given the adjacencies they've got, the line of sight they've got, the square footage they've got, and so on, and how can I compare that to, and then understand why they're not, right? Understand that it's in the wrong place in the mall, understand, and so on and so on. You get the idea. Which is rather poorly illustrated in this slide, which clearly I need to do more work on. But and forgive the product name at the bottom, but this is really about a lot of the value here will come from not just understanding the local dynamics within a single location, but being able to relate that to the broader picture of why that within my own brand, I'm a major global retailer, I'm a major global real estate company, I'm an airport, and so on and so on. And I'm saying what that should be, why isn't it, what can I do to address that performance gap? Okay. So I'm now going to give this part of the case study an enormous great speed because I'm worried about getting this done on time. And so just very briefly, an idea of the work that we've been doing in marketing. And certainly done a lot of these projects at Forest City. We've certainly do them with all our clients, because all our clients kind of say the same thing about marketing when it's a physical event-based marketing program. Generally, real estate companies tell us marketing's kind of viewed as a luxury, right? And it's viewed as a luxury because I can't really measure it. And so I look at the fashion show, or I got Rihanna in to do a concert, or I've got someone turning on the Christmas lights and so on. And a lot of people seem to come, but I've got no idea if that really helped. Is that fair? That's a lot of the history around how marketing's worked in events, right? So we think that we can help with that, right? Which I think we are part of the solution of making in-mall and in-store marketing strategic rather than overhead. And the way we do that is, if you plot a classic marketing program like we've got here, what are we going to do, what are the objectives, and so on, and you play that through, here's a classic event program, that is a US-based shopping center. I start to put targets around each event, right? So you can imagine the meeting here around, I'm spending this amount of money on the event, what do I expect to get out of it in terms of people that have never visited the center before, which retailers am I trying to influence the spend within, who is sponsoring it, and so on, right? So everyone's got that. Then I run the actual event. And this is when I need to have a pretty good handle on what the behavior of people in a given space in the physical location is, right? It's a key indoor analytics marketing problem. So in terms of how we're using the path technology, and I think I have got a Forest City site here on screen, I would take out a part of the mall and say, this is the area I'm trying to influence, right? And I'm going to put on a fashion show in the middle of that space, and it's co-sponsored by 6 different fashion retailers that are also within that space. So traditionally, we would have done all of the event, and then afterwards we would have gone around the retailer and said, did that help? Do you think it was a good idea? Should we do that again? So on and so on. Now, what we're going to do is start to measure the space. So we'd say, okay, I've built the stage. I did these graphics myself. I build the stage, and then I start to plot where people are. And I'm getting to pretty specific detail, right? So probably on a 5-minute delay, actually where are people standing within the center when I come back to do the historical analysis, or when I'm working in real time trying to optimize space and time. And I say, how many people are here? What is conversion in store, right? So we probably wouldn't do 5-minute delay sales data over months and months, because the overhead of doing an analysis like that is hard. But if we're trying to understand a specific marketing event, we might carve 2 or 3 hours out, participating retailers, work through how point of sale data is working. A lot of what we do, and a lot of what all indoor analytics is about combining newly available data points with long-standing data points, like the point of sale stuff Stephanie was talking about. So then it's 15 minutes before the event, right? And the traffic is getting much denser, right? And conversion and dwell in the store, the mall is going up, conversion in the stores is going down. And then I've got the event on, it's packed, right? And we talked about what's the comfort level here. There's a health and safety perspective. Is the event attracted everyone that we wanted, so on and so on. And then really key part is probably an hour and a month after the event. So in the next 60 minutes after the event, where did those people that came to the event scatter to, right? Where do people go? Where did they land? What retailers did they visit, and how long did they stay? And then a month after or a week after, if we get into how many of those people had never been to the center before, and how many came back again within the next 30 days, 60 days, and so on and so on. This is interesting for the VP of marketing, right? Because this allows them to take a very different level of conversation around budgeting and funding and what events to repeat, especially when I plot those against what performance I expected them to be. When I share that information out with the retailers, you might not share the right-hand side of that chart, but certainly when you tell people what influence you've had over their sales. And then when I plot all of the different events that I'm doing and say, these are the ones I want to repeat and these are the ones I don't, right? So I think that's a good case study of how that works. And it's similarly true for display advertising and billboards, and what are the actual value of those.
This stuff, I apologize that we've run out of time. We need to get the, thank you very much, Cyrus and Leslie.